This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Hollywood Casino and ESPN Bet want to help you get ready for football season. Download the ESPN Bet app today and explore an action-packed online sportsbook. Then stop in the casino to catch the action in person with a tailgate party on November 17th. Visit HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com to see how you can reserve your package. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Michelle Wolf cracks up the DC Improv in Washington, D.C. for 5 straight nights tonight through Sunday. She joined me to reflect on her career from Late Night with Seth Meyers to The Daily Show, as well as her controversial roast at the 2018 White House Correspondents' Dinner and the state of comedy as America prepares to enter a second Trump administration.
Hello.
Hey, Michelle Wolf. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're coming to the DC Improv this Wednesday through Sunday, so a ton of dates, and it's a crazy time to be coming to the nation's capital. It'll be, I guess a little over a week after a crazy election. Yeah, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, the most selfish version of this is that I have this material that I want to do in DC that I want to tape on during my Saturday shows in DC, and it just also feels like the only thing to talk about is the election.
Yeah.
So in the most selfish, very like singular way, I'm like, well, I want to do my set, and this is getting in the way of it. So I'm upset on that level. I can't say I'm surprised. I
Yeah.
can't say I'm surprised. I wish that wasn't the case, but here we are. And yeah, I mean, listen, to be president and to know what it is, and then to be able to go back in and know, like, okay, this is actually, if you want to get this thing done, this is how you do it. To like come back in and really know that could be terrifying for any leader. Um, and Trump in particular, it seems like it's like now he has the power and the codes,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
You
Exactly.
play a video game once and you're like, okay, I made it pretty far. But then the next time you're like, I know where I know the shortcuts and the
You know the cheat codes.
right, exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like, hey, Trump is we're about to have a second Trump presidency. And so let's invite one of the most famously controversial comedians from his first term back on, back on our show. Yay. Come see it in DC. No, but in all seriousness, and we can get to the correspondence dinner, later. We'll move a little more chronologically later. But just while we're on sort of the topic of your show this week at the DC Improv, like, did you have, one set of material sort of prepared if Kamala won, or a second one if Trump won? Like, you know what? I always wonder, like, when the candidates have to do a concession speech or an acceptance speech, do their speech writers write too? And how does that work for like a comedian?
Well, to be honest, it's like I just have this hour that I've been working on for the past year, and most of it's about like being a new mom and,
Yeah.
touring and societal issues that are happening. It's like right now, I don't have any jokes about Trump or Kamala.
Right.
Um, and so, I like I knew the like I logically knew the election was coming, but I never put the two together that I was going to
Yeah.
be there right after. So
Oh, you weren't
I don't
planning to
know.
be on
I'm
DC specifically. It just worked out
no,
that
I
way.
didn't time it at all. It just happened to be when it was available. And I mean, DC has like some of the best comedy crowds because
Yeah.
everyone in DC is a little corrupt, I think. Um, everyone's gotten some lobby somewhere, right? And so they tend to be like a pretty good, really fair crowd. And I have a great time at the club. And so I was just looking forward to doing the shows. So to be perfectly honest, I might just do a little bit up top, but I don't really, I have other stuff I'm working on,
Right.
and I just kind of want to talk about that. And I want to, like I said, I'm going to be taping the shows on the Saturday that I'm there, and so I just, I want to be able to. I'm sure I'll have a lot more material as time passes and we see what situation we find ourselves in, and also if we're allowed to say things.
Right. Well, that was sort of my next question. Like, will certain dissenting voices, be censored? So we're kind of in a tricky spot. And then but like, where I guess the question is, where's the line? Like, because you had Tony Hinchcliffe at that rally calling Puerto Ricans trash and all that stuff that went over the line. But where is the line? You know what I mean?
I personally, the thing is, you can't draw a line because everyone has a different line, right?
Right.
And so, like a lot of times, especially for jokes, you can laugh and laugh and laugh at a comic set, but then once like it's a joke that feels personal to you,
Hmm.
then all of a sudden you're like, wait, that passed my line.
Right.
But all the other jokes might have passed someone else's line and it didn't pass yours.
Right.
Everyone has a different line. And like, I am very much of the persuasion that there actually is no line. Every joke can be told if it's good enough. The
Right.
problem with Tony's jokes is that they were bad. They just weren't good jokes.
And there's
Like,
also everything's also in context. If you're the only stand-up doing your own show at DC Improv, then it's sort of that's the context. And I think there should be extreme freedom of speech in that because it's in the medium of satire.
right.
But it also, I guess, the context of that was in a whole rally where it was like a trend of consistent things throughout the night. I guess maybe is the issue. But then again, everyone has different lines, so.
Well, no, but I 100% agree with that too, because I think that's a really important point. Because when comics are in a comedy environment, that, like, okay, we know everyone's joking.
Right. You
I
come
think
to
one
see
of the
Bill
things he
Burr,
said,
that's what you're getting.
right, exactly. And so when he says, "Oh, my jokes were taken out of context," it's like, no, you took your jokes out of context. You
Mm,
put them into something else. It's the same as like, a lot of times they'll have like different like comedians or, pundits or whoever on a lot of these news media shows. And it's like, if you're doing comedy on like a news panel, it's not going to play the same. It's not the right environment for it. Like you need
right.
to do comedy in a comedy environment so people know to take this is the joke time. So
Right.
it's really, I think and then, what makes me really mad is when people that aren't comedians who are like, say, are on the news or whatever, and they get in trouble for something. They're like, well, I was just joking.
Yeah, it's a different. Yeah,
Right.
you can't blur news and yeah, if it's a news environment or a comedy club, those are very different. Same as a comedy club versus a campaign rally. It's very different. So it's the context and it has to be funny. I think those are the two things that you're saying.
Right. And like, for example, the correspondence dinner is a roast. You are
Right.
supposed to roast. And
Right.
so I roasted. And they didn't like that either, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead. I was planning to get to it later in the interview, but let's go ahead and do that. Why? Because I would love to hear some of your origins and growing up. I know you have some William and Mary, little semi-local ties as well. We'll get to that in a second. But since
oh
you
yeah.
mentioned the Correspondence Center, we might as well just go ahead in there. I guess it was 2018, right? It was like a 19-minute roast,
Yeah,
and it
2018.
was the second time that Trump didn't attend, right? I think he started not attending because before we even get to yours, I believe in 2011 was the famous time where Obama roasted him, and a lot of people think that sort of sparked him to
Yeah.
to go on to run in the first place. Which, by the way, I've mentioned it on a couple past shows with Larry Wilmore and John Leguizamo. I've already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again to you. That week, I'll never forget. It was the whole Trump calling out the whole birth certificate birther lie, right? Throughout the whole
Yeah.
week. Then Obama and I can't remember who was hosting. Was it Seth Meyers?
I think it was Seth.
We're
Yeah.
roasting Trump that Saturday, like April 30th. Then the next Sunday, May 1st, they killed bin Laden. So
Yeah.
while Obama, everyone forgets that. So while Obama was roasting Trump in this moment that everyone says like launched him, on a revenge tour to go to the White House, Obama behind the scenes was like working with SEAL Team 6 to go to Abada by
Yeah.
Pakistan.
He
That's
was
crazy. No, everyone
he
forgets
was
that.
doing a complete super classified mission.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, this also just makes you think it's like like the government is so like there's so many things happening all the time anyway, where you can just
Yeah.
be like, wait, you're here
Yeah.
doing these jokes, and it's like,
Mhm.
what's happening? It
Exactly.
makes you think like, what else is going on?
Exactly. And to me, the contrast was so stark that week of like what what President Barack Obama was actually doing during that week in preparing for this raid to get the mastermind of 9/11, right? And then
Hmm.
meanwhile, is having to deal with this reality show host saying he wasn't, the birth certificate's not real. Like he's having to deal with both of those, and those lines, I guess, sort of crossed that night of what was actually important versus what was he was getting having to the nonsense he was having to deal with.
Right.
And now here we are, however many years later. So,
Yeah, that is, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I did totally forget that. That was like I remember Seth said that at one point. I think maybe it was, he was interviewing President Obama or something where he was like, I'm sitting there making jokes and you're doing like a classified operation in the
yeah.
background, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
To me, it just blows my mind of what the sound bites on the cable news and stuff was that week of, oh, is the birth certificate blah blah. No, he's actually going to kill the guy that did 9/11. But
right.
anyway, all right. So that sort of sets, that was before your correspondence dinner. So you go like 7 years later or something in 2018. And so
Hmm.
Trump stops going because, of course, he doesn't like the institution of it
Right.
all. I guess his press secretary at the time, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, goes instead. And I remember you had some zingers. I know C-SPAN cut it off halfway through, but a lot of people came, Colbert, a lot of people came to your defense. But I thought the one line was great. You said, "quote She burns facts and used the ash to create a perfect smoky eye." Like I don't think
Yeah.
that's funny.
Everyone said I made fun of her appearance, and I very clearly did not. I never said she was, I never talked about her looks at all. I talked about her makeup.
Right.
I said that she reminded me of the woman in Handmaid's Tale, but like I never said the woman in Handmaid's Tale. Like they're assuming I think that woman's ugly, which I don't. Also, your looks have nothing to do with your capability for a job.
Yeah.
Whether you think Sarah is pretty or not pretty, she honestly not a bad press secretary. She can spin. She was really good at spin.
Right.
Like, I mean, the
And that's the
moment a
job. That's
question
the
came
job
out,
of a secretary, press secretary. Yeah.
right? And but I don't think she's a good person. Like I don't think she's, and I certainly think that if you're going to sit there at a roast, those were pretty tame jokes. Like everyone's seen now the Tom Brady roast, right? You
That is
know
going
how
hard
hard
after.
people
Yeah.
can go in.
And also that
That
got repetitive. That went too long, by the way. Like
that
it
was
was
way too
really
long.
funny
That
for
needed
like
to
an
be
hour,
like
and then I'm like, they're repeating yourself. Yeah.
it needed to be an hour long, in
Yeah.
and out,
Yeah.
and then Gronk can have his own 30-minute special at the end where he just rambles on.
Yeah. And shatters broken glass into the crowd and all that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I,
But
I
yeah,
agree. I agree. But
I
yeah,
think
but
I
but
don't
yes.
think I honestly think everything I said was well within bounds.
Mhm.
I do think, and I said this, I've said this before, but I'm 100% certain. What I said was the media, like you pretend like you hate Trump, but you actually love him because he's making you a lot of money.
Ratings, yeah.
Um, and then I say it's like, and you should give him some because he's so broke, blah, blah, blah. But
But
I think to
yeah.
distract from calling out the media and their complicity in all of this, they said, oh, look, she made fun of this woman's looks.
Right.
And it was completely untrue. I mean, you could look at the joke a million different ways, and it's just not about her being pretty or not.
I mean,
And it's also
honestly, it was kind
irrelevant
of
to the job.
it was kind of that line. She burns facts and uses ash to create a perfect smoky eye. I mean, that is way tamer than literally Trump himself a couple years earlier in an actual debate saying that Megyn Kelly is angry because blood
She's
coming out
got
of her
blood coming out of
wherever.
whatever.
That
Yeah.
is way more personal than what you said about a smoky eye. Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But anyway,
It's
so
just,
you said you were calling out the media as well. Like, do you remember?
yeah.
Everyone remembers the Huckabee Sanders stuff, but like, I think we've covered that pretty good. But what about like, what do you think got lost in all the outrage over that about your critique of the media? What did you remember a certain joke or two that you were really trying to call out the media's complicity in it
Yeah,
all?
I mean, I essentially the kind of like the crux of the whole speech was that, like I had done these jokes about Trump not having money, and he's like, he's so broke. How broke is he? And then
Yeah,
and I did this kind of rolling thing on that. And then I get down to the media, and I made fun of MSNBC, I made fun of CNN. Like I said about CNN is the only thing useful on CNN is where Anthony Bourdain tells me to eat noodles.
Oh.
Um,
Oh, and that's
rest in
bittersweet
peace,
now in
Anthony
hindsight. Yeah.
Bourdain.
Right. Right.
I said on MSNBC, I think I said of Rachel Maddow, uh, something about her show. It's like going to Target where you go to get like milk and you leave with the entire history of the Byzantine Empire, like something about that. And then I specifically, I said something about, I think I said something about Fox and it being like, but we're here to make fun of the news and Fox isn't news. And then I said I said to the media in general, it's like, you guys like to pretend like you hate Trump, but I actually think you love him because he's making you a lot of money. Like he couldn't sell his books, his vodka, his ties, Eric,
Now,
but he's
nice. Now you can add gold sneakers and playing cards and
right.
And Bibles.
And so I just, it's basically that they're hand in hand with Trump. It's not,
Right.
it's good for their ratings.
Yeah.
And they're not like the stuff that might be important to actually tell people or useful to actually tell people. They're disregarding for the things that are fun, like that'll
Mm.
create the most buzz, that people will click
Yeah.
on the most, that people will share.
Yeah.
Because it's not about, there's very little integrity in the news media anymore. And it's
Yeah.
how we get to places like we are today, where a president's going to go on a podcast
Right. The Joe Rogan
in order,
podcast is more it compared to Walter Cronkite or whatever back in the day. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, you're on a podcast with one of those bros and they're not asking you hard-hitting questions. They just make you seem like a fun guy to hang out with.
Right. Exactly. And here we are on this podcast. I'm trying to
Yeah.
ask, insightful stuff here. But yeah, I remember Sean Spicer tweeted tonight's correspondence dinner was a disgrace, and you wrote, "Thank you." I remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're supposed to press buttons, and so yeah, I mean, it's this is a fascinating conversation about where the line of free speech is, and I think you got to be funny and the context of the room you're doing it in. Like there, you were there for a roast, or a campaign rally is different, or you know what I mean, or on a news
Right.
show, like you're even if you claim it's the Five or Waters World or whatever, if you claim it's that, it's still on a news network. I don't know, like the lines are much different for that kind of a thing. All right. Hey,
Yeah.
I would love to thank you for going into that. I would love to, back it up slightly and hear a little more of, how you got into this racket to begin with. I know you were born in Hershey, Pennsylvania, famous for Hershey Park in '85 and
Yeah.
high school track team, all that stuff. Who were your comedy idols growing up? What was it just, like eating Hershey Kisses and watching, I don't know, what was the '80s? Eddie Murphy or something?
Well, so I really I grew up watching Saturday Night Live. I
Sure.
absolutely loved it. And it was the Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, Chris Kattan.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was the time when I was like, I'm still pretty young at that point, but like I would watch as long as I could. It's way before you could like, I wasn't recording on a VHS and watching it the next day. I was just trying to watch it live. And then
Yeah.
I normally would fall asleep on Weekend Update because as a kid, that's like not the most exciting part. Now it's like, I mean, I love news satire now.
Apologize to
And I
Colin
also think
Quinn
it's
right
funny to me
now.
that, yeah, I know. It's like I'm such a huge fan
Yeah.
of Colin Quinn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
also have all these memories of like falling asleep
Yeah.
while Colin Quinn was on TV. And if
Yeah,
I
when you're
went
a
back
kid, you
and
don't
watched
get
any
it.
of, yeah, I just didn't get it. I'm a kid.
Yeah, exactly. You want to
Um,
see the silly
but
Chris Farley
yeah,
stuff in between. Yeah, and the Adam
yeah,
Sandler in
I wanted to
between.
see the
Yeah.
cheerleaders,
Right,
like I
right,
wanted to see the
exactly. Yeah.
Spartan cheerleaders. I wanted to see the
Right.
the NPR women, uh,
Yeah.
and so I pretty much like that was my like comedy. I wasn't really into stand up as a kid. I
Mhm.
didn't really have any reference for it, but I really loved Saturday Night Live, and I watched Mad TV as well, and In Living Color, and
Any kids in the hall?
you know what? I didn't watch Kids in the Hall till later, but then I
Okay.
watched Kids in the Hall.
Yeah. I like these are the Daves I know. I know. Anyway. But yeah, so you grew up on all the great stuff. Yeah. But you went into
Yeah.
kinesiology at College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. So you didn't think you were going to be doing stand up at first, right?
No, I had no like I didn't have any concept that like I didn't know how you could get into any of that. It wasn't even like
Right.
I just didn't I thought you had to like know somebody or I don't know, like live in New York or whatever it was. And so I just wanted to get a good job. I always loved exercise science. I used to watch those. There was those old Gatorade commercials where people would run on treadmills and be like hooked up to like the breathing machines and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like who studies those people? Like who are those? And I found out it was like kinesiology, which is the study of how the body moves. And I was like, let's do that. Let's try that. And I honestly, I mean, I love studying it. It's very interesting. I still like, I mean, I run, I love running, I love track and field. And I still, like everything I learned is still very relevant to life. I just
Yeah.
have not ever used it once in a professional capacity.
That I love that it was like the Gatorade commercials, and you wanted to be the person with the clipboard watching the person running on the thing. You wanted
Yeah.
to be Dr.
Like I knew
Dre
I
and
was
Eminem
enough to know
watching
that
50
my
Cent on the treadmill.
right. Like I'm like I'm a realist enough to know that like I was never going to be the athlete.
Yeah.
Like I love sports, but I was like I'm not going to be the professional. So I was like how do I work with the professionals so I could be clipboard lady?
Clipboard lady. Wait, who were your track idols though? You mentioned your comedy idols, SNL, but like who was it, like the Jackie Joyner Kirstys? I'm trying to remember what era, or you know what I mean? Who did you, Michael Johnson? Like who are you rooting for?
Yeah, I mean, I loved Michael Johnson. I mean, I just loved watching track. I didn't really become like a like personal like track and field athlete specific fan. I
Right,
just
right.
loved watching it, but I wasn't like, it was also like back then it was like I loved the sport, but it was a lot harder to watch it because it's rarely on cable.
Yeah.
And, like there wasn't like all these other like sites you could watch it on. So then it wasn't until like I know after college that I really got into the sport and was like, now I could name all the athletes that I love.
Right. Yeah. Back then it was
Um,
like the Olympic every 4 years. You could watch it on the Olympics, and that was about it. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So it wasn't until after college.
All these well-rounded interests, you're enjoying SNL and comedy, you're enjoying kinesiology, you're studying that at William and Mary, track, all the stuff. But then somehow you go to New York and you're on Wall Street, right? Or Bear Stearns and J.P. Morgan Chase. You were working there right around the time you started doing improv at Upright Citizens Brigade and People's Improv Theater. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exact. So I graduated college in the spring of 2007. And right before I graduated, I was a little burnt out from school. I worked really hard at school. William and Mary is like a notoriously very nerdy school where people try. I mean, the saying with William and Mary is like where your best hasn't been good enough since 1693.
That's
And so it's
good.
like, yeah, we're like notoriously just like overworked type A, people. And so like I wanted to do something, I didn't know if I should go to get a master's or, try to get a PhD or go to medical school. And my friends on the track team, they were all finance majors and they were like, you should get a job in finance. We'll all live in New York for a while. And I was like, well, I've never once taken a business class. And they were like, this is what they told me. This is what like Wall Street also told me is
Yeah.
that they don't, as long as you're smart, they love athletes that are smart because you can learn things, but also you'll do anything to win, which is like
Okay.
a terrifying mindset for finance, right? I mean, it's accurate, but terrifying.
I'm gonna paraphrase the quote from the Wall Street movie with Michael Douglas, Oliver Stone. Remember, instead of greed, for the lack of a better word, is good. Speed, for the lack of a better word, is good. There you
Yeah,
go. Greed and
exactly,
speed combined.
exactly. Yeah, it's this whole it's a really, I mean, it's a crazy place. Wall Street's a crazy place. And I interviewed at Bear Stearns. They offered me the job the same day. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna move to New York. I'd only been to New York like two times before for like, very touristy trips. So I ended up moving to New York, getting this job at Bear Stearns, but it's July of 2007, and Bear Stearns hedge funds are already like tanking. And
Mm,
then March of 2008, of course, Bear Stearns collapses,
yeah.
goes down to $2 a share, gets bought by JP Morgan. I'm young and cheap labor essentially, so I kind of, you know, am kind of below the radar of all the major firings, which lasted about a year, I would say, even longer. But March of 2008, Bear Stearns collapsing. Friends of mine came to visit New York. We went to a taping of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, nice. Do you remember who
And
hosted that night? Do you remember?
yeah, it was Ellen Page and
Oh, wow.
Wilco was the music guest. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, how do they do this? Like, how do you get here? So I Googled everybody. They almost all started in improv. And so I just signed up for improv. And then I took my first improv class and I was just like, let's just do more of this. Like I just wanted to do more and more and more of it. I'm still working at the bank during the day, like so I'm working at JP Morgan, like until it's time for the improv class at like 7 or 7:30, coming in like my suit to improv,
Yeah.
like doing the class, hanging out, maybe going to see some shows, and then getting up in the morning and like, getting to work at like 7:30 for those lovely calls with Asia.
Yeah.
And like
Wow.
it was a real I mean, it was definitely a young person's game. Um
Lots of coffee for closers needed at that point. So
yes,
you're out late
exactly.
on and that's so cool that it was you saw. I guess that would have been right after Juno that you saw now Elliot Page now. But
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
that you saw that right after Juno, and so and then you starting to do the improv theater at night and stuff, and that's just so I love that story. Finance by day and comedy by night. I love it.
Yeah, and then like I did more and more. I started to like I did more and more improv, and then eventually I transitioned into stand up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just I did more and more of that until I found this like dream day job.
Yeah.
So there's this company called D. Shaw Research, which is David Shaw had this hedge fund. It was like one of the first quantitative hedge funds, and he made billions of dollars. And then he opened up this other shop called D. Shaw Research, which is a computational biochemistry research lab.
Okay.
A friend of mine from improv was working there, and he's like a Princeton graduate, very, very smart guy. And he was working in recruiting there, and he was like, "We're hiring. It's this job is like not a hard job, but they want it to be for someone who's like really smart, but has an alternative agenda." So essentially, you're kind of like doing work that like would be pretty easy for you to do, but they assume you're going to do a very good job at it because they're also willing to support and be flexible with what you're pursuing outside of work.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
I was like, I didn't even know that job existed. It was so crazy. I couldn't believe I got it. It was absolutely amazing. The company is so nice. They're like actually like trying to do like really good work. Like they're trying to find out where like different proteins attach to cancer molecules so that if they could, find out where they'd attach, they could make drugs that won't let them attach. And, like they're working on Parkinson's. Like they're doing a lot of really good work there. So it was a
Yeah.
really very refreshing to go from Wall Street to like a place where it's like, okay, these guys are like looking for solutions to problems. Um, and but then the other person who had my job ended up leaving to go to medical school. And so they were like, I think you can just do both people's jobs. And I was like, that became too much work. And
Yeah.
so I did less and less work until they fired me.
Aw.
So, which was very hard, by the way, because I don't like getting in trouble. But or at the time I didn't. I don't care
That's
now.
that William and
But
Mary overachiever. It did not compute with I can't be fired.
exactly. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. So what do
But
I do
I
now?
knew
Yeah.
I knew once they fired me, they were going to pay me severance because it's a very
Right.
nice company. And
Hmm.
I with my severance and my like savings, I had like a year to like a year's worth of savings. And I was like, I got to try to make it this year. And I got fired in like January of 2013. And then I got hired to write at Late Night with Seth Meyers in January of 2014.
Wow. So you use that severance and savings and everything to reinvent yourself over that 1 year period, and your life would change forever.
Yeah, I
That's
did as
awesome.
much stand up as I possibly could. I tried to write as much as I could. And it was back when you could still write a lot of jokes on Twitter, when Twitter was like fun and a
Yeah.
thing. And I would write jokes all the time. I
Yeah.
would do stand up at night. I was trying to write sketches and whatever. And it all perfectly timing paid off. And I got like essentially a dream job.
Well, let that be a lesson and probably inspiring to more that people than you even know listening to this. You thought you had one dream job, and then they put more. They basically doubled your workload, and then you lost the job, and you could have viewed it as, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. Instead, you use it to reinvent yourself. And so that brings us to Late Night with Seth Meyers. I guess 2014, you said, was like when you started going
Yeah.
on there, and you stayed on as a writer too. But tell me about your character you go on as grown up Annie. It was like a take
Oh my
on Little
God, that's my
Orphan Annie,
favorite.
but you were all grown up. How'd
It's
you
still
do?
like one of my favorite things we've ever done. Honestly, I can't remember the exact moment I thought of it, but I thought it would be really funny if she's like, you know, everyone thinks grown up Annie's so sweet, but like all these it was like a very much in the time of like the party girl scene too,
Yeah,
in like the news and like the Paris Hilton of it all and everything. I was like, I don't
yeah.
know, a lot of women with rich dads aren't great, you know? And so I just imagined her as like a party girl, into like too many, probably a lot of drinking and drugs. But the one of the most fun things about that is that my hair in that costume, that's my hair.
That's not a
They just
wig. That's
picked
your
out, it's
actual.
not a wig. They just picked out my hair and made it really big. And that to me is very, very funny. So
That is great. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow
yeah.
you'll be writing on that show.
And
That's
me and John Lutz used to write those together. And John Lutz is like, I mean, John Lutz is kind of like comedy writer, like royalty. He used to write for 30 Rock. He was on 30 Rock. He's absolute like so funny, one of the best improv people I've ever seen, but also just like a super funny writer, really easy to work with. Like he comes from the Saturday Night Live world, so it's like a dream to work with him too, and it was just like I don't know, I have a lot of really good memories about working on that show. It was very, very good time creatively and like helped me learn a lot. And I mean, essentially did a good job shaping the kind of writer I am today as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it was a hard knock life. No more. I can't think of any more Annie puns, but that launches you. So that's 2014. Then you stay on as a writer and contributor and stuff on Seth Meyers. But then I guess 2016 is a huge year for you. I'll list a couple. So you start contributing on Daily Show with Trevor Noah as well. I guess Jon
Mhm.
Stewart had just left a couple years. Now he's back. But yeah. So 2016, you're doing Daily Show with Noah. Your So Brave special is really heralded at the Edinburgh Festival. You do Live at the Apollo. You're starting, I mean, you're getting gigs all over the world basically, but I want to know about what it was like helping write the Oscars for Chris Rock that year.
Oh my gosh. So the craziest part is that I was at work and I had a voicemail from an unknown number. And like I was like, who called me? And so I listened to it. And you know how Chris has like such a distinct
Oh,
voice
oh yeah.
that he was like, Hannibal Buress had recommended me because Chris was going to write. And he was like, do you know any good writers? And Hannibal recommended me, which is very nice of him to do. And and I got this voicemail from Chris Rock being like, hey, it's Chris Rock. I was wondering if you could give me a call back. And I was like, what?
Am I getting pranked? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember telling Seth, I was like, I just got a voicemail from Chris Rock asking him to call him. And I go, what? And I was like, what am I supposed to do? And he goes, call him.
Yeah. What if you're like,
And
nah, it's good. I'm all right.
right. So yeah, he asked me to write for the Oscars. There's a whole team of writers and we met with him one day in New York and we started writing jokes for him and we had this entire set written for him.
Yeah.
And then all the Oscar nominations come out. There's not a single black person nominated. And
Oh
so
yeah,
it's like we have to
that was
write,
hashtag Oscars so white. That was the year. I flew out
right.
and covered it that year. I remember that year. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
spotlight one. Yeah.
And so we had to rewrite the entire set. We had it all written and we had to rewrite the entire set. And I mean, it was really fun. It was really fun to work with Chris. He's like, he has a I like writing in his voice,
Mhm.
but he's also like super open to it. It's like
Yeah.
you can pitch him any joke, like, and he'll either like it or he won't like it, which is very
Yeah.
fair. And it was just a really fun, cool experience. And me and like two other writers were like literally backstage with him during the Oscars just to like throw him lines if he needed anything.
Yeah.
And like, of course, it's like I'm wearing a suit, but also heels and like
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 20 minutes and I was like, I gotta take these heels off. And
Yeah.
so like I'm standing there with like bare feet and it's like Leonardo DiCaprio's like just up from winning an Oscar, like there's all these, I mean, like every like famous person that, is like big at the time is there and I'm standing back there with bare feet, kind of like literally being like, oh my God, how am I here?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. Oh, and that's must have been a dream come true. And yeah, I mean, to me, Chris Rock, I mean, Bigger and Blacker is still one of the funniest HBO stand-up specials I've ever seen. No, Abraham Martin and Pac. There's Jesus and Biggie on the seesaw, Jesus in the air.
And
Like,
it's
oh,
like it really it like I developed a friendship with Chris and like he's like
yeah,
ever since then it's like I've worked on with him different things and like he's always been available if I've ever had like questions about something or needed him to look at something or whatever. He's just
yeah,
been like a really solid, mentor in that way.
absolutely. And you would get
And then I went on a world tour with him.
you went on a world
Um
tour right after that. Nice.
yeah, like not it was the next year, I guess. But yeah, we went on a world like I mean everywhere. We went through like Sweden and Norway and Copenhagen and Amsterdam and like so many different places. We played O2 in London.
And you did it all without slapping him once.
Not once. I didn't even feel like slapping him.
Oh, but those jokes really slap, as the kids say. Well, and you got your own HBO stand-up special after that. Nice Lady, Emmy nominated. So
Yes.
congratulations. You were finally on Chris Rock's level. I'll say it. All right, so you're touring the world with Chris Rock. You get to do your HBO stand-up special debut, Nice Lady, Emmy nominated, all that. And so that propels you to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2018, which we sort of covered at the top. So we don't need to go much more into the actual, routine you did or the backlash. But I would like to know sort of like how in the aftermath of that, now you're, there's all this controversy, which can be good and bad. There's no such thing as bad press, and a lot of people thought it was hilarious, and a lot of people were, shocked or whatever. But it made you a household name at the very least, right? So what was that like, kind of realizing that everyone knew who you were at that point, and how did you sort of like forge ahead with this new, public identity?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly like it was such a busy time because before the Correspondence Dinner, I had gotten a show at Netflix that turned into The Break.
Right.
And we were preparing that show. Like we were in pre-production for that show. And then while I was also getting ready to do the Correspondence Dinner, and then I did the Correspondence Dinner and I had to come right back into pre-production for the show. So like, we had like another month of like stuff and it kind of put me in this weird place where it was like, you know, the whole purpose of the break was to like not be about news and not be about like, because all the late night shows at the time were about like very heavy news satire, right? Which
Right.
I like, but like I just wanted to be something that wasn't that.
It was the break. It was supposed to be a
And
break from that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then, but then the Correspondence Dinner put me in a different position where it was like, I got so mad at the media for
Right.
like, you know, being like essentially like saying I did something that I clearly didn't do.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I want to kind of like go after the media a little bit. And I don't know, the show just ended up not I ended up I think I was too frazzled and not clear-headed enough to make the show exactly what I wanted to make it. And I was trying to balance two things and I just like so I didn't really end up doing either successfully. Like looking back, I wish I had just been like forged ahead with what I wanted to do and stuck to that. And then any of the other like news media or like correspondence backlash, I could put into stand up or something like that.
You're kind of getting
Hindsight,
pulled in too many
obviously.
different directions rather than one, clear North Star on the show.
Yeah. And I wasn't, it's like it was my first TV show. So I also let like a lot of, I wish I had more confidence back then to really stand in it and say, like, no, this is what I want to do. You hired me to do this. And like, just let me do the show I want to do. And
Right.
instead, I kind of let people influence me and like, bent in ways that I wish that I had just been more confident. But I mean, again, the show was a great experience. It wasn't like I had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah.
I wish we would have gotten the opportunity to make more episodes because I don't think 10 episodes is enough really for anything to like really take hold, especially in that late night kind of
Oh yeah.
format.
Oh, Seinfeld would have been
Um,
canceled if they canceled it after 10. You know what I mean?
right.
Like you gotta get some time to get road under you. But
Right.
but this was more of a
But,
talk show, you know, even that's even harder, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's like even like late night when I was at Seth, like I think it took us about a year to really find, like what direction the show was going to go. And we tried a bunch of different things, saw what worked, saw what didn't work. And that's like kind of what you need to do. But anyway, then I just got to do, the show got canceled and I got to do my favorite thing in the world, which is stand up.
Yeah, so that
So,
at least gets you in the door with Netflix, right? So even though the break didn't last
yeah.
long, then Netflix gives you the stand-up special joke show, and then what a bunch of others,
Hmm.
Bill Burr's Friends Who Kill, like all that's on Netflix, I believe. So yeah, how much have you
Yeah.
enjoyed that outlet of beaming into all of our homes? I mean, we knew it was going to be a big deal, but I mean, I remember, I mean, when we were getting little discs in the mail, man, and now suddenly you can beam into all of it, with the pandemic and everything, especially it accelerated it. Everything's so splintered now. Like I don't even know what to make of the media landscape now. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, how much have you enjoyed doing those Netflix specials?
I mean, I love stand up. But stand up's my
Mm.
favorite thing in the entire world. I am like also very protective over it, I think, because I think there's a lot of people who do stand up that aren't really like they say they do stand up, but they're not stand ups.
Right.
And I think it's like I absolutely love jokes. And I'm always lucky enough to like I keep thinking of new stuff. And so I keep getting to make new shows. Like I have another hour that I taped last November, and then I'm taping another one this November, just next week. And so,
That's the one
like I
Saturday at
have,
DC Improv. You're filming it, right?
yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
film
yeah,
it. I don't
yeah.
know if that's what we'll end up putting out. I might just use that for clips, but
I
we'll
see. I
see.
see. I see.
We'll see how the chips fall on that. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, it's just we're in an era where like there's a lot of people are doing stand up, and there's a lot of different ways to get people to see your jokes. I think one of the unfortunate things is that like, you know, stand up specials are like I think they should be more special. Like I do think that there
Nice.
should be like a little bit like I think a lot of people are like, well, who's the most popular? How can we get them, we need all the views we can on this rather than curating like a really good stand-up catalog where you could like be like, no, if you watch every single one of these specials, you're going to be like, wow, that's a good stand-up, that's a good stand-up. A lot of these people, it's like they might be really popular, but they're not necessarily the best stand-up.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, but I think the streamers could do a little bit better job with that, but
I love that
they're
idea.
also
Yeah,
trying to make money anyway.
it's not special and it's not a stand-up special. It's like a stand-up
Right.
it's stand-up I don't know, routine. Well, oh, routines have become routine. There you go.
Right. There you go.
There you go. We're coming up with these puns on the fly, so forgive us. If they're not perfect yet. You got to hammer at them for a while to chisel them and make them perfect. But yeah, no, I agree. Like when we're talking about when Chris Rock would do a Bigger and Blacker, it was special because it wasn't, it was like, ooh, what's HBO gonna do? Like it's been a while since the last one, you know what I mean? Or Showtime, whatever network.
Right.
But yeah, now it's just and you could say the same for movies and TV shows in general. It's just there's so much stuff out there that a lot of it is we become apathetic to a lot of it, I think.
Right.
But well, best of luck standing out in that crowd of of so much content. I know you'll do it. I know because you got the track record of always, pushing the boundaries and stuff. So in your work you're doing now, as we wind this down and when they come to the DC Improv and all the other specials you're doing, like what are we now? 6 years post Correspondence Dinner? Yeah. You have not pulled back at all since then, right? So that controversy happened, and you're like, "Screw it,
No.
I'm going to keep doing me." If anything, you're even more committed to doing, pushing the boundaries, right?
If there is one thing I learned from that, like overall that I really took away from it in a very, very valuable way, it's just like just you got to be yourself anyway. Like I would never apologize for what I did at the Correspondence Dinner because I think it was great. I think it was good then. I think it's gotten better over time, which is kind of rare with stand up sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's really one of those things where it's like the older I get and the more I do this, the more I realize that it's like, listen, not everybody's gonna like me, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
But the people, I'm going to try to be as authentically myself as I can and tell the jokes that I want to tell about the things I want to talk about. And the people who like that and want to be my fans, great, welcome. If you
Right.
don't, I don't care.
Right.
That's fine.
I haven't looked up the numbers to see how much, if the YouTube version of it or whatever has blown up, but I'm sure it still holds up for your fans. You know what I mean? So
Oh, yeah.
that is
Yeah.
rare. But and by the way, and we should say because gosh, I guess more than half of the country voted for this guy. So if there are Trump supporters or Republicans or whatever listening to this, because we all have family and friends that listen that are of all stripes, right? Why should they come see it?
I mean, I don't care. I don't really care who comes to see it,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
don't be an idiot of an audience member, like come enjoy the set, laugh, don't laugh. But like, I have, you don't have to agree with my opinions. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to think the way that I do. Um, and if you don't like it, that's okay. But like, I don't know. I think people get the wrong impression, maybe about me from the correspondence dinner, where it's like, I think the whole game is rigged. Like,
Yeah.
like
Right. Right.
I'm not someone who's like, listen, do I would I have rathered Kamala get elected? Of course. Do I think she would have been able to fix everything? No. There's so
Right.
many, like the problems run so deep
Right.
that I I I think been a faulty promise. Like everyone says, all the systems are broken. I don't think the systems are broken. I think the systems are working exactly the way they were supposed to. I think the problem is it was false advertising. I don't
Ah,
think the systems were ever supposed to benefit us. I think they're working exactly how they were supposed to. And that's at the benefit of like corporations and
the
special
powerful and
interests
rich.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and keeping the people in power that are in power.
And that cuts across
Um,
no matter what, every listener out there, no matter what politics you are, you're poor, urban, rural, whatever, like that we all a lot of us have a lot more in common than we really think, I think. And it's
yeah.
that fight against the powers that be or some people, that's sort of probably what we all should gather around. But
Well, I mean, there's that old saying that it's like, as long as you keep the people fighting with each other, they can never fight the power.
right.
Right. I mean, and everyone wants to believe what they want to believe. Trump's going to say, I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to do this for you. You're going to have this because of me. It's like, he's not going to, like it's
Still
a
waiting on that
lie.
wall, yeah. So
Right. Yeah. It's
and the
like,
healthcare,
and,
yeah, all that.
and so it's not, it's all just false promises.
It's all BS,
And
false advertising.
if as long as we're fighting each other,
Then the people in the lobbies that you said earlier are laughing at the rest of us.
yeah,
So,
they're having a
well,
great time.
yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for contextualizing that. I wanted to give you a chance, post correspondence spinner to kind of talk about that because, and not be pigeonholed or stereotyped as, some super left wing comedian or something. Yes, you have your politics. I have mine. Everyone listening to this has your own. Everyone, that's the right. We're as Americans, but come see your show. Come see Michelle Wolf. You know what I mean? Because it's equal opportunity. I don't want to say equal type of opportunity offender, but there can be snowflakes on all sides. Is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yes, they're
Come
100%,
laugh.
100%. And I also have, you know, against my what I hate, I absolutely, and this is no offense to you or anyone else with a podcast. I
Yeah.
hate podcasts, but to keep up with the times, I just started my own podcast.
Hey, plug
So,
it. Plug it.
so Thoughtbox, it's available anywhere you can find podcasts, which again, I don't know where that is, but anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Thoughtbox. We try to release the episodes on Mondays. It's just me rambling. It's really just me rambling. I don't have any thoughtful questions like this.
Thought
Um,
box. I love it. I love that you said anywhere you get your podcast. I made that same joke. Who was it? Maybe Kim Whitley. I can't remember who I was a comedian I was interviewing. And it's so funny, like because with TV shows, it's like now streaming on Paramount Plus or tune in on CBS. Like there's an actual time and a date. But with podcasts, they're just like wherever you get it, like
yeah,
wherever you get your
I don't
podcast.
know. Find it. You find it.
Yeah. Because you're always like, find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcast. That phrase to me, I just
Right.
cry. Wherever the hell you get it, we don't even know.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
Us creators don't know. Wherever you get them, that's awesome.
Well,
So
I mean, to be honest, like it's like I don't really listen to podcasts, but they can be like incredibly useful.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of people hear about people and see people because of your podcast, and they
Sure.
learn
Oh,
more
yeah.
about them. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's definitely not a bad gig.
It's just there's so
Uh,
like you were saying, there's just so many of them out there. It's just
yeah.
like how do you break through is the thing. Yeah.
I just wanted to be like, I wanted to be like old school comedy where it's like, no, I just do stand up. And then I'm like, all right, I guess
Do you sit
I gotta
down?
modernize too.
Got to do some sit down material as well.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. You've been more than generous. And folks, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Michelle Wolf went ahead and restarted the Zoom so we could keep this going. That's how generous of a human being you are. So thank you
I'll
very
double
very much.
Zoom.
Double Zoom, double Zoom. Well, if you like this double Zoom, come out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the DC Improv.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I really really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it too. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.